What's up, everybody? I'm Nick Taylor with the Crafty Gents. Today we are at Muddy York Brewing Co in Toronto, Ontario, and we're joined by Jeff Manol, who's the co-founder of Muddy York. How's it going, man?
Good, man.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
I'm excited to try this beer. What do we have here we're watching?
So this here is a special beer for me. I mean, I love all the beers that we make, but this one in particular I developed basically because when I go out, this is what I drink. This nice session IPA, which is an oxymoron because IPAs are usually obviously bigger, stronger beers. But I don't necessarily want to be out drinking like 8% beers all the time. So developed this 4.9, more in the sessions range, which is kind of the trendy tagline for these type of beers. But beautiful Mosaic and Eldorado hops in there. So you get, and Vermont yeast, so you get nice peach, mango, maybe a little bit of pineapple, definitely very hazy, lots of flavor, very crisp and bright, but light. So you can just, enjoy this all day long. So
cool.
One of my faves. Just launched in the LCBO about 3-4 weeks ago. So we're in about maybe 45 to 50 stores right now. Short cans, which we love as well. So yeah, look for it.
Awesome. Should we try it?
Yeah, for sure. Cheers, man.
I mean, this is not your first time trying it, which is nice.
Nope. Always happy to have this one though.
It's so flavorful. Like there's so much tropical fruit flavor in that. And it is surprisingly light, like body to it.
It is, yeah. But it's crisp, but you get some nice mouthfeel to it. I do have to give props out to Sawdust City and Sam and the crew out there. One of my all-time favorite beers is their Golden Beach Pale Ale, which I've loved for years. And when I was homebrewing, I was always trying to make these kind of style of beers, even though there was really no such thing as session IPAs at that time. But I was always gearing up for that, and then drank Golden Beach for ages and ages. And when we were doing the brewery here, I wanted to develop something like this. So I actually contracted Mosaic about 2 years ago. I couldn't get it at the time. And I didn't know what I was going to make with it, but I knew I was going to make something. And then when we got it in, this popped in my head. So this is a recipe that I've been kind of tweaking through our IPAs, and I decided to kind of play with it a bit, drop the alcohol a bit, and play with the water chemistry, and then just throw lots of Mosaic and lots of Eldorado in. So,
yeah. It's funny because I remember like talking with friends, and one of my friends, this is a couple years ago now, he just started to get into like these IPAs and these like stronger beers. And he's like, I love them so much. He's like, but I just can't drink like 8 or 9 of them. And I was like, you're not supposed to, man.
Yeah.
Like it's so much. But like one of these, you could have a few more and then not feel like you're going to go off the rails or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
It's more sessionable, which makes sense, right?
Exactly. It's
definitely
a staff favorite. And, at our place, you look on the counter and it's 90% Switchboard cans, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Just love this beer. And great for summer. It's sort of perfect time.
You mentioned when you were homebrewing, and that's how you got into brewing beer, right?
Yeah, I started just in my kitchen on the stove with literally a 7.5 gallon turkey fryer and just kind of cooking stuff up. Started with a few extract batches, extracted grain, and then jumped into all grain and had a slew of just disasters and just drain pours and everything. But really got hooked on the bug, as kind of almost anybody that tries homebrewing will get hooked on it. And just kept at it and at it and at it, and just loved the creativity and the science and the like building the equipment and whatnot, and just chipped away at it and brewed hundreds and hundreds of batches. Eventually started entering some competitions, got my BJCP certification, the beer judge certification program, started judging competitions, was fortunate enough to win a decent amount of medals at some national competitions, and just, which really helped me understand how to make better beer. And I had a tool and die shop here originally, and we were looking for a space. Ideally, I was thinking down in Leslieville, but trying to find a building was tough. It's obviously very expensive down there, and we were in this building anyways. So I basically started in the back corner, kind of behind my CNC table and drafting table, a couple small tanks, 300 liters, and it was almost like in the lunchroom, and people would come in and want to buy a beer, and I would kind of go into the closet and pull out a couple bottles and give it to them. And a lot of those people still show up now and have kind of seen the progression of the brewery, and it's been a fun journey. A lot of people have been excited to be a part of it.
That's great. So you had this place before, totally different.
Yep. This was actually all drafting tables and like...
The other guys that work here, like, I think we're getting forced out.
Yeah. Well, we started there, and then we knocked a few walls down, and then we forced the die shop into the back half of the building. And yeah, I think they had an idea then, but I would give them a few beers to kind of placate them a little bit. But eventually, I sold that off a couple of years ago now.
That's so wild.
Full-time beer, yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So so how long have you had the building for in total then?
Well, I was working for a good friend of the family I think I started here in 2003. And then in 2013, the owner, my friend's father, sold the business to me. I took it over, and at that time I started piecing this all together. So I've been in this building for, I guess, 16 years now, all said and done. And 2015, January is when we launched our first beer out in the world. So that's, I guess 4 years now, a little bit over 4 years.
Wow. So when you were doing homebrewing, you started a blog, right? Called Ophthalmology?
Ophthalmology, that's right.
What was that all about for someone who's like never read it before and never seen it?
It was a lot about mainly homebrewing, and just, it was kind of cataloging my journey of learning about brewing, just trying experiments. And I think, I got so obsessed with it, I think maybe my friends were getting a little bit tired of me talking about it. So I had time at the dye shop, it wasn't all that busy, and I wasn't running the place, so I had a lot of kind of time. So I would just, basically do experiments, catalog what would happen, water chemistry. I'd try to clone some of my favorite beers, like Smash Bomb IPA at the time was kind of one of the big beers that really opened my eyes to hops. So I was working to try and clone that, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Any success with that?
Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is that's kind of like the holy grail for me. Like it's a fairly simple beer as far as like recipe goes, but it's really, really hard to nail it as well as they do. Like it's an exceptional beer. So I'm still always in the back of my mind kind of vying to get to that level. Smash Bomb, I got pretty close to it. I did a tank house recipe that's been a huge hit with a lot of the home brewers back when tank house was really kind of the thing. So that's been done a lot, which was good. And I would build equipment and whatnot and kind of do the drawings and schematics and kind of plan that out. And it's still going. It gets at least, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 hits a month still, and I haven't added anything to it in probably like 4 or 5 years, but it's
that's pretty wild, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
It seems like, I would assume people use it as like an educational tool for like aspiring brewers.
For sure.
Is that something that you enjoy doing, or is that just like a byproduct of something that you were doing for other reasons?
I certainly don't consider that I have all the answers by any stretch, but at the time I just enjoyed it so much and wanted to kind of express it, and I found that was a good outlet to kind of, and it was good for me to kind of put it down on paper, because then I could break down actually what I was doing and then maybe understand what I was doing a bit better. So it was helpful for me, and it turned out to be helpful for others as well. So it was nice. And the home brewing community, and I think the brewing industry in general, is, I'm sure you guys have seen, is very collaborative, and a lot of people have certainly helped me on my journey, and if I could pass that on too, that's
then why not, right?
That's great. Yeah.
So when you mentioned this, but you went to home brewing competitions and had success there, like winning medals and things like that. Is that something that like encouraged you to start something of your own, like, or were you kind of already set on it at that point?
I was kind of, I wanted to brew anyways. So I guess it was at the beginning when I was entering competitions, like the feedback is nice, because usually the judges, would have more knowledge than I did at the time. And so it would help me point out a few things that maybe I wasn't getting in my beer. So that helped. And then, it's nice to be recognized and win the awards, but I think I just wanted to brew all the time. I was tired of making dyes, and I was like, this would be amazing to do all the time. If
they're not like spitting it back in the glass, it's probably a good sign.
Exactly. Yeah. Little did I know there's a lot more that goes on to running a brewery than just brewing, but which has been a creative challenge, but also very fulfilling at the same time, albeit stressful at times too.
So you, in 2013, right? You mentioned you finally opened Muddy York, right? And you landed on that name. What's the backstory behind it? How does that relate to like what you're trying to build here?
Well, Muddy York was a term that I remember, I don't know why, but it always stuck in my head from high school history class. I remember it very vividly, just Muddy York. It just seemed like an odd combination of words, and I don't know, just kind of sat in the back of my mind for ages. And when my wife Susan and I were thinking of names, that one always kind of came up, but I was like, I don't know, naming something that has to do with beer muddy maybe doesn't sound very appealing, so we kind of shied away from it. And we came up with some others that just didn't really fit, or they were silly, or they didn't really have much depth to it. One thing that I really enjoy about some of the, in particular, breweries in the States, like Anchor Steam and Sierra Nevada and all that, they have a really great backstory, and obviously they've been around a long time. There's definitely a depth of history there, but I find that very compelling. And with any business or whatnot, stories are very powerful. And I thought, well, there's a lot of history in Muddy York that I don't necessarily know, and maybe the greater people in Toronto don't always know, because we're not always exposed to it. My wife and I love history. we thought, why don't we dive into that and see if we can find, some interesting stories or beer names or whatnot. So we've kind of explored that a lot. Like some of our beers, Diving Horse Pale Ale was about the diving horses down at Hanlon's Point. So I was really interested in like the historical part of it. And, sometimes the history, especially like English colonies, I guess, can get pretty stuffy. So we didn't really want to go down that road. But for Susan as a designer, there's just a wealth of like imagery and whatnot you can pull on and create around that. And it just really tied into everything we wanted to do. We could kind of build on the story that already exists in the city. And it just kind of encompassed everything we wanted to do. So we stuck with it.
Cool. And so when you first opened, I mean, you mentioned having the tool and die. I was going to ask you, like, you didn't have a bottle shop, or you had a bottle shop, but not a tap room like you have now, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, like, why the choice to go that route instead of the other way. But being the tool and die story, that explains a great deal of it. But it's cool to see like that, almost like the ripple effect to now, because you guys are like, you relied on licensees, right, originally?
Yeah.
And now you have so many licensees across Ontario.
Yeah.
And that must be cool, right?
It's very exciting. Yeah, we've, everybody that's in the company now that plays a really special role and has helped us to get here, But yeah, we started off with licensees only kegs. At the time, I thought it was probably easiest to do as far as licensing, and then just the way the building was set up and the way we were brewing it. It kind of would have been too crazy to kind of have a bottle shop, and it was just me at the start. So I was having enough time brewing and then selling the beer and then running a die shop and then having to do a bottle shop all day long too. It was a bit too hectic. So we thought, why don't we get some kegs out there, see if people like the beer, see if it goes over well, get some relationships built and get some demand almost kind of built up. And then when we opened the bottle shop, it was about a year later. That's when Susan joined full time, and then we had the bottle shop. So we already had people that knew about us and were coming in to get the beer, rather than just opening our doors and having crickets and nobody knows who we are. So it worked out. I mean, having the die shop to be able to financially help out the brewery it made all the difference in the world. And it's just been very slow, grassroots, one step at a time, one beer at a time. Sometimes a little frustrating because we see breweries popping up all over the place with these big shiny systems and all that. And we've been very, very just word of mouth. But I think it's a stronger connection to our customers that way. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I guess your advice would be start a tool and die shop, open it up, run it a bit.
Yeah. Use another business to fund it.
Yeah. Well, one of the people that sell your beer, I mean, you mentioned it at the beginning, but the LCBO.
Yes.
Was that always a goal for you guys? Like when you first started like getting rolling, were you like, how cool would that be? Or is that something that you thought about after?
No, yeah, it was the last thing on our minds, to be quite honest. Yeah, we had really no interest in it. We just, wanted to kind of sell just directly to licensees, and then have the tap room. I mean, this is by far the best way to sell our beer, is right here in the tap room. We make the best margin on that, which helps us buy more equipment, hire more people, make more beer. The LCBO, I will say, the margins are a lot slimmer, but it really helps. We almost see it as kind of like paid marketing, because it's definitely got the brand and the awareness of who we are out there, for sure, because it reaches obviously so many people that we might not otherwise reach. So in that way, it's been very helpful. And we do make money off it, just not as much as we would here. But and it's a good way just to get beer out there, and hopefully people enjoy it and get it spreading around, and hopefully they do come visit and hang out with us. So.
Yeah, see your style out there and then come visit the tap room.
Exactly, and see all the other things that we do besides just the Gaslight Hellas and the Switchboard.
Yeah, so was it a big moment though when you guys got that in there, the first one, the Gaslight?
It was kind of exciting. Yeah, we were kind of like, oh wow, we're kind of, it's funny because the outside perception, people will come and they're like, oh wow, you got the LCBO, that's awesome. I'm like, yeah, we're not making as much money, but not that it's always about the money, but it's kind of exciting. It's kind of a bit of a benchmark, in the province. Obviously, it's one of the two retail outlets that you can sell in at the moment. So
right, being a craft like beer judge, like so you judge the Ontario and Canadian Brewing Awards, right? How does that affect like the way now that you look at brewing beer? Like, how has it changed a lot based on like before and after you went through that process?
It's definitely tuned my palate more into just assessing beer and figuring out what potentially is wrong or what's right. That's the biggest thing I can say, is that if you can't taste your beer, you're not gonna be able to make better beer. Like if you can't taste what's wrong with it, it's kind of hopeless. You got to be able to, you got to really strengthen your palate and try things. And it's not just beer, it's food, it's everything. Just trying to assess flavors and break it down, and through, in particular, the BJCP, and you can do this through Cicerone and whatnot as well. You do the off flavor tests where you'll get like say a very light lager and basically add oxidized flavors or earthy flavors or diacetyl or all these things, and you can really target what those flavors are. And that was a real eye opener for me when you can really focus. Like once you taste diacetyl, like anytime you have in a beer, you're going to know that's what it is. But
right.
So that was very helpful. And then trying a lot of the beers out there was helpful to see what the quality is and who's doing what. Well, I mean, we don't know at the time when we're judging them, but just to see the products that are out there. So it's really in those details. I've always said that it's not super difficult to make decent beer, but it's really very hard to make great beer. Like it's that you can get maybe like 85% of the way there, but that last 15% is really, really tricky. You got to really dive into the details, manage your process. I mean, things are, your hops and your grain and everything's changing every time. There's so many factors that could throw things into a tailspin. So you got to really dial that in and really critically think about the beer, not just about, how you're drinking it on a hot day, but like really break it down. Like why is it tasting like this? Why is it looking like that? Over time, what happens to the beer? You really got to break those things down.
So obviously, like with all those things you said, it's clear that you set a pretty high standard for yourself.
Absolutely.
When you're brewing your beer. So has there been times, like other times where you're not satisfied with the beer you produce, and like how do you manage that?
If it doesn't kind of meet, threshold, maybe is the right word. If I'm not happy with it, it goes down the drain. I'm not, I'm not afraid to do that at all. I'd rather put out a better beer, it's time, it's money, and whatnot. But if the beer's no good, then why would you put it out there? I mean, we spent so long building up what I hope is a very respectable brand, and people know when they buy a Muddy York beer that they're going to get a good beer, whatever that style is. I mean, if I put out some beer that's subpar, then that's going to just kill that instantly, right? So I would never, it's not worth it to me to do that. I would rather just dump it.
It shows though in the results. Like when you look at, having said that, like people have the standard of Muddy York now because you have the standard for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it shows like, I know this isn't everything, but last year, the 2018 Brewing Awards, you guys took home six medals,
We
right?
did, yeah.
They're right there?
Yeah,
that was perfect setup. That was not planned either.
No.
But that must feel really rewarding, right? When you look back at when you first started brewing, in your kitchen stove, to now, is it pretty surreal? Like, has this far surpassed your expectations of where you thought it could take it originally?
To be quite honest, I don't always have a lot of time to think about it.
Really?
I'm just so busy. And
now's your moment, right?
Yeah, I guess so. There are, every once in a while, I'll come in here and I'll think about what this place used to look like with the dye shop and just the transition, and I'll think, the timeline. It's been 4.5 years now, and I'll really kind of go, wow, this is pretty amazing. Like I don't have a lot of time to kind of stop and pat myself on the back for it. I mean, everybody's contributed to where we are, but it's just, I love the process of it. So it's just, this journey is really what I'm enjoying the most. But I guess every once in a while I'll sit back and be like, wow, this is pretty cool, like,
yeah, pretty surreal.
I get to go to work tomorrow and make beer, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting. The other thing that I always wonder, when you start making beer, you're doing it presumably for yourself, maybe a few friends, family.
Yep.
Now it's such a wide audience of people that you're trying to like cater to almost.
Mm-hmm.
How does your approach to brewing change from one to the other, or does it at all?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's always going to be, we're always going to make the beer that the vision that I have for it. But, I pay attention to what's going on there. I've never been one to kind of follow the trends or just kind of like, oh, this is the hot new thing. That makes no difference to me whatsoever. But I do recognize, like for a long time, we didn't do any sours, and now we do some kettle sours and whatnot. And they're big sellers, and I've really come to appreciate them and enjoy making them. So, I mean, we definitely go down that path. I'll always be a little bit more reserved on jumping on any kind of, like we never did a milkshake IPA. I felt like I wasn't so sure about that style myself, and people were doing it really well. And by the time maybe we would have done it, it kind of would have been passé anyways, so we didn't really touch that one. But to me, it always comes down, as long as the beer is good, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. If it tastes good, then go for it. So, we'll try out a few things and whatnot, and sometimes like we've released a beer one summer and it's been a huge hit, and then maybe we haven't brewed it, and then the next summer we do it and maybe the sales are a bit soft. So I mean, we are running a business, so we have to have beer that does
course,
sell.
yeah.
So we do take that into consideration, but never at the expense of the quality of what's going in the glass, for sure.
Is it like, is a lot of it like, I like this style of beer, so this is what we should like, is that goes into a lot of it?
Yeah, like Switchboard's a perfect example.
Right,
like,
yeah.
I go out, this is the beer I'm buying for sure, and I'm drinking this all night. You know?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a selfish motivation with this one, but glad that's a good seller as well.
But it is almost like a passion project when you do one like that, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I love this beer, so I want to
sure.
brew it. Right?
And I mean, I'll always push myself to do better anyways, but it just, you know, when that passion's there, like it really forces you to kind of really go the extra mile to make sure it's the way you want it. So.
Right. So in 2017, you guys opened the Taproom, which we're in right now.
Yeah.
Was that just amazing, like having people come here?
That was a big moment for us, yeah, for sure. That was always kind of, we were working towards it, and the amount of crap that we went through trying to get to this place, and the renovations and the mess and the floor that was here before, like it was a disaster. Like people would come in here and there was like black glue under like linoleum tiles and like partial walls in here.
Stepping over, I just gotta get to the fridge.
Oh, it was a disaster. It looked terrible. There was like skids of old bottles that we were trying to wash here. We didn't have a bottle washer. It was a mess. But when we finally did that, and we actually had people who could come in and hang out with us and talk with us and appreciate what we're doing, and we could connect with them, that was really, that was a big moment. Yeah.
It sets it up on such a different level, because like you said, they can come in and talk to you, but then they can see your style and like what you're trying to build, really.
For sure.
Right? Beyond just like your beer.
Yep.
And this place in particular has such a unique style to it. Like the Taproom itself, I love hanging out in this place because it's just such a cool vibe. It's got like this like gangs New York vibe.
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of always what my wife and I were thinking about it. And I have to give credit to Susie. This was mainly her vision here to put this all together. It's very homey, and that's kind of who we are as people. You know, we want people to come in and be comfortable. Doesn't matter who you are, how much craft beer you have or have not had before. Come in and hang out, you know, and just try some stuff, you know, and you might be surprised at maybe what you like, you know.
So obviously you have 2 beers in the LCBO, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot more here
in
the Taproom. Does it allow you to be like a little more experimental or like try funky things? Like you mentioned that sour and stuff, just having small batches here?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I had the choice when we were getting upgrading the tanks to these size. It was like, you know, we could get a fewer number of tanks, bigger size, or smaller tanks and more of them. And I definitely wanted to go with more tanks because I wanted to have variety. Not everybody's going to like the same beer, and it just it gives me the ability to try many different things and
some like creative freedom there too.
For sure. Yeah. So we definitely have some of ours that take up a lot of the tanks, and we've got new tanks in the back now that we'll double up on batches. But I like the variety. Like I was saying, like not everybody's going to like the same beer, and you know, like we got lagers to English beers to German beers to IPAs to sours. So I want everybody that walks in the door to find something that they like. You know?
Yeah.
So
even like a Bock too.
We got a Bock.
You don't even see that very often.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially in this this area or this like beer culture. It's a lot of like these hop heavy like IPAs and those things. So having a Bock, that's really unique.
Very different. That's been a huge hit, that one. That's the second year we've done it, and it's I'm very proud of that beer. It's turned out very well. There's a lot of people that really like it. We actually just did a Schwartz beer with Lauren Richard at Hot Tex Mess down there. This wonderful lady, and the Schwartz beer flew like crazy. Like it was a huge hit. So it was an excellent beer, and her contribution was a big part of that. So
exciting, man. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure, man.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you very much, and this is delicious.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Perfect.